We won't take much of your time as well. So in a couple of hours we should be done. We'll round up and then we'll have a little bit of an interactive session as well. You're welcome again. I'm just going to hand over the mic to one of our co-founders to start off, and then we'll also interact along. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, my name is Dolakpade Jibril. I'm one of the co-founders of Traction. Very excited to be here and to see faces and people that, some people that we've been working with, and people that we hope to bring to the ecosystem. Traction, in summary, is a merchant solution, building a one-stop platform for businesses to run and grow. Over the last, we've been around for about 3 years, and over the last, and it's been a journey in terms of what we've been able to accomplish. We have, and one of the things that, this event earmarks even a little bit of our metamorphosis is, for a very long time we've been direct to merchants, and we acquire merchants directly. We provide us, the solutions we've built is directly to merchants. But one of the things that we aspire to be is also, because we spend the time to understand merchants and the journey, we aspire to be like a distribution platform for other businesses to offer their services to SMEs, and we've done that, and we continue to do that through partnerships. But I think interestingly, the combination of everything we've done, from software to payments to business tool, increasingly lots and lots of startups, not just in the fintech space but outside, have been like saying, you've done the work, you have distribution, you have the support system, support network. How do we plug into that? I think a lot of people are looking at that from what's the revenue opportunity. A lot of people are looking at that in terms of satisfying customer needs, and also like increasing their share of wallet, which is revenue, within their customers. And so I think Traction is very excited to do that. And so far, in the past year, we've partnered with banks and software businesses who are basically looking to drive these needs, right, or fulfill these needs. I think also the cash crunch in February and March really spiked that, where even non-tech businesses like FMCGs, Coca-Cola's, were like, we cannot afford to basically be left us outside. How do we plug in? How do we partner? So this today is going to basically be, a conversation in terms of how do you basically navigate that. I'm very excited in terms of the panel we'll be able to pull. Damilola, who is our moderator, is a very good friend to the firm, to the company, and she'll drive the panel discussion. After that, we would have, and that would take about 40 minutes. After that, we would have a Q&A session, but also just a little bit of an overview in terms of the solutions that we have from a partnership point of view. And then there are refreshments. That we've provided. Damilola, as I said, is a friend of the firm, company. She's the head of platforms at Ventures platform, and Ventures is one of our dearest investors. Damilola has been also a tech sis, but spent the last, I'll say, 7-8 years, focusing on supporting startups from Ventures platform, as well as CC Hub, where she led also platform support. So very excited. She understands the space, she understands our language, and I think that she will basically be able to drive a wonderful conversation. So ladies and gentlemen, let me just help me.
Thanks for the introduction. Today we are focused on a very exciting topic. So embedded payments as a strategic lever for tech businesses. How do you navigate and how do you execute that opportunity? And I have with me here, or with us here, amazing panelists, and I'll bring them on stage one after the other. My first panelist is a co-founder of Traction, a startup focused on empowering businesses with innovative technology solutions that enable business owners to effectively manage and grow their business operations. So basically our host today. And before co-founding Traction, Maiwa was a consultant at Digital McKinsey and was responsible for building digital products and businesses across Africa, including launching the first digital bank in Africa, the largest health logistics platform in Africa, and delivering advanced analytics for a top FMCG player in Nigeria. Please give him a round of applause. Amazing. So you're welcome to the stage as well. And I'll bring in the second Maiwa now. Maiwa Kuyoro is a partner at McKinsey & Company, where she co-leads McKinsey's payments and fintech work across Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. She works closely with private, public, and social sector institutions across Africa on topics related to growth and large-scale transformation, business building, and organization design, as well as strategies for foreign direct investors to accelerate growth and development in Africa. Please let's put our hands together, Maiwa Kate. And then last but not the least is my last panelist, and I love when we have like an almost all-female. You're welcome, Maiwa. Zainab Arileshere, I hope I got it after all the practice, okay. Is a strategic product management leader, passionate about optimizing digital products and enhancing the performance of software product development teams. She has built technology solutions across different industries, including B2C and B2B e-commerce, digital banking, and supply chain. She's currently the head of the product team at Omni Retail, also previously at OmniBase, where she's building a platform to digitally unify the retail supply chain in Africa. Please give Zainab a round of applause. Alright, so today we're going to be discussing embedded payments, which is essentially a subset of embedded finance. And basically, that, as some of you may already know, that here is sort of integrated financial products and services into like everyday products. So as businesses, even whether you're a tech or non-tech, you can integrate some financial services and products into your own business. And you have embedded insurance, embedded banking, embedded payments, embedded lending. But today we're focused, thank you so much, we're focused on embedded payments. And interestingly, it's been growing at a really fast pace. And so before we go into all the nitty-gritty questions, I wanted us to first align, right? What does embedded payments mean to you? And for Zainab particularly, for Omni Retail, what does it mean? So let's start with you, Maiwa.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So I think that with the way I, and just by extension, Traction thinks about embedded payment is, how do you, lack of a better word, embed? How do you embed payments journey into a non-traditionally payments platform, right? So whether it's a commerce platform, whether it's a software platform or banking platform, how do you embed that end-to-end payments acceptance or payments outflow journey into those applications to ultimately deliver better value for customers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having us here. Dolapo, I have to say, you've got a bunch of former colleagues. So at some point or the other, we all used to work together. So it's actually a privilege and very much fun for me to be here today. I think Mayo is actually, and to no surprise, I do not disagree with him. I think he's defined it very excellently, which is the act of providing financial services in a non-financial services journey. And the way we see that today, we see a lot of it happening in the digital form, right? So, in our context in Nigeria, you have things such as Jumia having Jumia Pay. You have Omnibus having OmniPay. So you're seeing that with an increasing amount of digitization and e-commerce, that we're seeing increasingly, we're seeing a lot more examples of non-financial services providers providing financial services. But actually, what I found interesting, and I think this is the way the world is quite circular, and when I was doing some research actually on this topic, is that this is not a new concept, right? It might be new in our markets, but it's not a new concept. So if you are aware of things such as loyalty cards, or someone buys you a gift card, for example, which is a store of value and you can use it to pay for something. You go to a grocery store and they tell you, well, do you want to open up our, some of these store cards have like store cards, which are like credit cards, right? So this is not necessarily a new concept today. I think what is new is the way that we are now, as Maya said, for lack of a better word, embedding it, or we are putting it into a lot of digital journeys. So I want to go onto Amazon and I can just click a button and I don't have to put in my card details, or I don't have to go to PayPal, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that. And it's really, from a consumer perspective to help enhance the customer experience as part of that journey. So I think it's exciting. I think we're seeing a lot of it happening. I think in our markets, I think again, when you look at all that's happened in terms of the innovation, I think our flavor will be slightly different from what you see in markets such as the US and the UK, because I think we're at 2 or 3% e-commerce penetration, so there has to be a flavor that also sort of takes into the operating context of Nigeria. But I think it's a very exciting development.
Hi everyone. Hi again. So on the Omnibus perspective, what we're doing with embedded payments is ensuring that each player in that value chain has that experience within the software that they're using. It means that there is no external payment service, and they're able to understand that user experience or go through their flow of payment in the same space where they're doing their trade on our platform.
Thank you.
Jesus.
All right. So I think you already started touching on something, Maya Wake. And I just wanted to add, and I'll ask you this question as well, Zainab, is how did the cashless policy, or how did you see the cashless policy drive embedded payments? Either from the customer side or even from merchants embedding it or customers accepting it. How did you see that trend go locally?
I actually haven't looked at the numbers post January. I actually need to go and do that bit of homework. But when you look at all of the volume of electronic transactions in Nigeria over the January, and I think it was January, February, March, the first quarter of 2023, the spike was intense. I don't even know what to call it. Like, when it was when you say something is off the charts, because how do you begin to explain to people what 300, 600% growth is? But that was the effect of the fact that people could not pay, traditional journeys where you would pay with cash. So for example, I want to order something and I do cash on delivery and things like that. You're paying, in one form or the other through electronic payments. I'd be curious to see how much you guys saw growth during that period of time. But just because people were not able to access cash, you saw a little bit of you saw a lot of a shift in behavior. I think what would be interesting is actually looking at where we are at the end of the year and to see how much of that behavioral shift was sustained versus because we had a very intense cash crunch.
I'd like Zainab to speak to that, and we were discussing, they had started embedding payments at Omnibus prior to the cashless policy, and she said they were testing it out because people were not really sure. right? But once that happened, just
so we had a few thousand users as at, let's say, end of 2022. So these were people who had been on the journey with us. There was trust. There was like high frequency of purchases. So it was easy for us to say, but we have this payment system now. This is how you collect money from your own consumers. This is how you can pay to us. We're using it. And then came when nobody could use cash to pay for anything, and we were literally seeing them begging us to say, "Hi, people have home pay. We want to use." And at that time, the only channel we had was just digital or transfers, and they were saying, "No, we can go to the bank. Or we use USSD. How about you do POS solutions?" So it was actually at that point we knew that what we were testing and afraid to take to people, or even at taking to them and they were not adopting, now it was time for them to adopt it because they didn't really have anything to lay on. Now, like Maya said, it was like really ridiculous. It was. I think I tried to like a 2x of what we were doing initially. It was surprising to see that people had come in to adopt it. Now we had done a lot of load balancing, and we wanted 1 million concurrent users. But at the time we had those 1 million concurrent users, it was really heavy traffic for us, and it was like one of the big milestones for Wimpy at that point.
And has it, like Maya was saying, is it sustained, or
Yes.
do you see a drop off?
No. There has not been a drop off because for people who were, as we'll call them, the unbanked or the underserved, they had learned during that period and they keep using it. Now they're even advocates. They're not like, even when you bring cash these days, they're like, no, I have to pay. Let's do this. And it's easy for them, like I mentioned, because it's in the same circle. You receive money from your customers and then you're able to pay us with that same money. So it's just seamless and easy, and everyone is adopting it. And chats are literally still going on.
Awesome. So if you've not embedded payments yet, I think we've pretty much sold it. Maya, have you seen anything similar or different as well in terms of the local trend?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that February and March are probably the busiest months of my entire life. Literally, because I think that everyone has said, I think the volumes were completely off the charts. I think at some point at Traction we actually just run out of terminals because we just, like literally deploy to every single person. And I think that two things. I think it helped us to, actually understand, because many times you come to this thing to talk, and what we all talk about, opportunity is big, right? It's all of that, but you actually almost sometimes we haven't fully internalized how big this could be, and I think that those 2 months really helped everyone to actually understand how really big that opportunity, like that cash to digital migration opportunity really is, right? And now honestly, like every player has got a part to play, right? I think during that period, I don't think there was any single player that was able to meet the demand that came about then. I think the second thing was also, like Zainab said, it also really helped to educate merchants, right? I think since then, right, when you go to sell to merchants, you're not trying to convince people about why they need to accept digital payments. Everyone now understands why, right? Because everyone is like, God knows what's going to happen again. The next time there's going to be a crunch, right? And so it's basically also made it much easier, right, to actually get more merchants on board because the case has been clear to everyone.
Thank you. And I think another important thing here not to miss is that, and I asked Zainab, and I said, what if you were not building this solution before the cashless policy? What if it wasn't even there, or you were not thinking about it? Then you would have been dealing with, you wouldn't have had cash as well. And I think that's what is very important, is that you are thinking about what your business needs, or what your customers would need, even before they need it, and even before it becomes a problem, because you guys would have been in serious trouble. And this moves me to my next question, is like, okay, so we're talking embedded payments now. There might be people in here thinking, well, should I just do the entire thing myself? Should I take over the entire value chain, create the whole payment, do all my licenses myself? Fair enough, some people like quality. So they want to vertically like integrate everything. What do you think about that, Maiwa A? And then Zainab too, you can touch on it as, because it was a decision point for you at Omnibiz. Do we do this payment thing ourselves or do we integrate? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that, many times, companies are driven by, when they make decisions, are driven by many factors, right? There is sort of like economic motive of, I want to maximize profit, there is, the motive of I want to own my business, I want to own my customers. And there's also just the motive, for folks who are venture startups. Well, what do I tell my investors? But I think that the most important perspective is to like think about the customer's perspective, right? A customer isn't, or let's say business in this case, isn't thinking like, actually, who's the platform that owns me, right? That's not what they're thinking about, right? Ultimately, what they're thinking about is, I have this 5, 6, 7 needs, right? Who is best placed to basically offer and solve those problems for me, right? So I do think that, as much as, companies, want to control as much as possible, and, sometimes Nigeria forces you to want to sort of like own everything, it's super important to say, where do we have the strongest capabilities, right? And if it happens that, you are a super business and you're able to kind of like, do payments and commerce and software and, lending and all of those things together, then so be it, right? But I think that, many times, companies have within their DNA, right, specific things that they're very, very good at, right? And it's very important that the companies try to like, own that and make sure that you're ultimately the best at doing that, right? Even attraction, sometimes we try to, tell ourselves, super important that you never become like a, jack of all trades and master of none, right? You kind of need to be very good at one thing, and, even if you want to offer other services to merchants, you are able to sort of like, collaborate with people who are experts at those things, right? So we, went to payments, but we also offer a number of other services to our merchants, many of which, are actually, powered by other partners as well. So I think it's super important to understand, where do your core capabilities lie, right? And how can you then sort of like, bring in folks who are good or great, at other things that your customers might need, but ultimately for some sort of like, win-win partnership with them.
Thank you.
So I agree 100% with what you said. And in our journey at Omnibiz, at the beginning, we knew we wanted to do a 360 with our customers. So we literally had a checklist. How can we make procurement simple for them where they have all their assessments in one place? So we did e-commerce check. How can we help them do their store and stock management? So we did only store check. Now that they have these large warehouses or distribution centers that they run, how do we help them with their Salesforce automation so they can also buy from like the bigger manufacturers? Check. And when you look at all their transactions, hourly, daily, weekly, however it is you want to look at it, you know that they do payments in some way. They need to procure and they need to receive value when they sell to people. And so definitely payments was one of the boxes we wanted. And when it got to time for payments, we have the capability of, this is time to brag, we can build it. We can get all the licenses. Yes, thank you. Well, we decided at that point that we can share all of this transactional data of the business and transaction health of our players with someone or with partners in fintech who have built a solution for two things. One, we get the solution, embed it into our system and serve our customers. And then we're also giving them this data so that they can also build better solutions for companies like us. So at the point at that point we decided, okay, we're going to go with partners, and then we also decided we're going to go with multiple partners, so that at any point in time where anybody decides to, because there's some times where we have infrastructure downtime or maybe disruption in services, we want our users to have the best embedded experience, and so we can easily switch between partners. And so it was, like you said, it was literally win-win. We get service for our customers, and they get that data and a wider reach to our type of market that they would have not necessarily gone into in the first place.
I think it points to what Mayowa said at the beginning, that it's all about the customer. What does the customer need? In your case, it's like, let's work with multiple partners. If we do it on our own and we are now the ones with the downtime, what will happen? But we can work with multiple partners, and I love it. And we've touched a bit on some use cases here. So I'll move to the two lovely Mayowas sitting here. What use cases have you seen are very popular or widely used, in your experience? And do you see that we could use more use cases maybe locally?
Absolutely. So when you think about the word embedded, there's two concepts. There's the distributors, right? And those are the non-finance based platform owners. And then there's the people who are providing financial services. The typical, and what we've seen globally, is the typical distributors and the typical sorts of entities that do embedded, I'll focus on payments now, are one, e-commerce, right? I think that's one. I think another one that we've seen globally is telecom providers, so your large telcos. Thirdly is also some retailers, right? People who do all sorts of retail goods. That's another one. And then on the other side, in terms of the types of, I'm talking about the two sides of the equation, the types of financial services or the types of payment services that are provided. You have like payments, so facilitating the movement of money from one medium to another. You also have issuing, so card issuing is another one that we see quite often used. And then the third one, which I'll talk about, because although it's not payments, we're seeing a lot of payments providers actually lay out that onto the services they provide their merchants and customers, which is lending. Right, so the very interesting things you're seeing around buy now, pay later, for example. Although in Africa and in Nigeria, we have I've seen a few models that are like save now, pay later, as opposed to buy now, pay later. POS financing, so in the sense that I am able to lend you money based off of the transactional history I see from what you're collecting from your customers. So I think on both sides of the coin, the distributors, so the digital platforms that are owning the customer and distributing the products, and then on the financial side, I think there's quite a number of permutations and combinations that you can take.
Thank you so much. And Dolapo, Mayowa. So Mayowa, what are the use cases for when people come to meet you at Traction, right? And how can you also expand on that?
Yeah. I think that one way to think about it is also if you think about sort of the journey, right? That folks go through in terms of like payments, right? So starts out with like just payment acceptance, right? Across different form factors, whether it's cards, whether it's account-to-account transfers or USSD or QR code, whatever it is, right? I think there is the number of use cases around just enabling businesses or individuals to basically access payment. But I think to be beyond that, right, is also, and it's where embedded payment gets really, really interesting, is what happens after payment acceptance, right? The second part of that journey is around the reconciliation, right? And that's where, when people are accepting payments in platforms where they're doing many other things, right? Really now helps them to really make sense of, exactly what their money, what's happening with their money, right? So, like the example that Zainab gave, right, is, yeah, I can accept payments now with OmniPay, receive money into my wallet, and from there I can basically also now, buy products. And so I actually had a clear view as a business owner that, hey, I sold 1 million naira, I spent 700K to buy products, so my profit is 300K, right? And I think that's where a lot of the beauty of embedded payment comes in, right? Or whether it's a software provider or whatever it is, right? You can actually now really help, businesses to, make better sense of what's happening with their money. I think the third side is really, where people start to spend, right? So I receive, I can reconcile and make sense of it, and then I actually need to also, that money also needs to go out. And there, things like issuing wallets and the ability for customers to also pay out are also use cases that we basically that we see. My work here mentioned already, like card issuance, another way where people can now store those value on cards and also spend there as well. But also like non-payment use cases that are quite interesting, right? Savings, right? Kind of like we've kind of seen use cases around like save as you earn, right? Where folks can now say, hey, 5% of whatever I make, will go to a savings platform, right? And to if that was embedded in an existing savings platform, you can start sort of like do interesting stuff, right? So kind of across that journey of payment acceptance, reconciliation, and then actually spending the money in the different use cases.
Right. Thank you so much. I like how when things come to Nigeria, you have to localize it. That's why like Domino's or KFC, they must sell jollof rice when they come. Very standard. Let's say buy now, pay later. Here, you save now, pay later. Zainab, I know you mentioned some bits on it, but I'll ask you a two-sided question. What are the benefits that you've seen at OmniBiz for embedding payments? But on the flip side, how have you navigated some of the obvious risks, which is fraud, which you even mentioned that some of your customers were saying, why do you want to do payments? Are you not scared of fraud? And then you also have data privacy. I know not everyone talks about it sometimes, but as a business, you have to consider that. So on one hand, what has been the benefits? On the other hand, how have you guys navigated fraud and privacy risks?
So the benefits, I will not just talk about the benefits to us, but to our partners and to the gig workers. I'll start with our partners, and I think I already sort of mentioned it. We give them this transactional data, and they're able to leverage that to build better products, wider market for them. For us as well, part of what my already said, it's the operational side of it. Reconciliations are faster. So if you look at a typical distributor who will do like end of month accounting or wait till like 72 hours because he's expecting value X and he's getting value Y and sheet is not balancing. So by sheet I mean SHWET. Now with the embedded payments, is getting like instant payouts. The minute is delivering products is getting value immediately. So that's two. No, that's two. Okay, for OmniBiz and for the partners, and then for the distributor. Now the fourth use case is our gig workers. We have a lot of field teams that work with us, and the more milestones they cover or the more actions they take, they get rewarded for those things. A good example is if you deliver, let's say maybe 100 shipments, you get X amount. If you deliver 110, then there's this tiered amount to what you do. So people know that the minute they do these deliveries or they take these actions, then they get their rewards immediately. So it's in four folds that way. Everyone is getting something instantly out of it. So the data privacy part of it, for every single data protection policy there is with the regulatory bodies, we are following them a 1,000,000% because you don't want to get into trouble for not following them. And I remember I had a huge fight with some people on the team when we were doing credits, and they said we had to store BVN. Like, we're not storing any funny BVNs on this system. The minute you validate that this is a real person, trust that impact. And your last question was about risk. Yeah. So the risk is in twofold. First, of course, is the fraud. And we built, and remember I told you we have the capability to build amazing. So we built an internal fraud monitoring system that literally flags anomalies. So say a retailer who was giving like a 500,000 naira line of credit, now is trying to buy something worth 2.5 million. We see your transactions. We know the health of your business. We know you don't have that capability. You will not be able to take that transaction. And then with all our partners, I think today we have about 14 partners, Traction being one of them. They also have their internal monitoring alerts that will not let this transaction go through because we go through them to make this payment. So that's the first one. The second one is infrastructure downtime. It's a big Again, I think I already mentioned it. We have several partners, so if one person is down, we switch to other partners, so we have seamless experience for it.
Right, lots of gems there, guys. Hope we're all taking notes.
Maybe if I just add something there, right? I think that, especially on the data privacy issue, I think we've actually seen, two types of partners that exist. So there are actually partners that say, hey, I want to sort of almost fully embed, the payments into my own journey. So I want to control end-to-end the experience, right? And so you come in essentially as like an infrastructure provider, right? And like on the lease, we will control, we'll do whatever it is we want to do. So we own the customer information, and that's not shared with Traction. But actually, there are also second type of customers who are like, hey, we actually do not want to really get involved in payments, but we want our platform to interact with it. So when customers come on board, we will explicitly tell them that, hey, you are signing up to Traction for payments, and you are using us for X. However, right, your information, your payment or transaction data, right, will also, sync with this platform, right? So that happens with like software providers, for example, even, a couple of like microfinance banks, but like, explicitly you sign up for Traction for payments, but hey, your money will land in the account, right? And there will be transaction history. And so I think, there is that, ultimately for players, that choice in terms of thinking, ultimately what works best for us, what do we want to be, do we want to be that, and the reason for why some of them do that is, for example, on the CX or customer experience side, I guess, folks are like, do I want to sort of maintain like a massive call center now, dealing with payments related issues, do I want to be the one that customers come to with all this stuff, or would I rather just, outsource that completely to somebody else, right? And ultimately, I think, people choose what works for them.
Thank you. I think key things that you said on that data privacy is that one, do not store data that you don't need. Two, do not share data where you don't need to share. And then if you do need to share, be very clear with your customers that, we need to share this data for social reasons. And speaking of customers, Maya or Kate, do customers, directly or indirectly expect embedded payments from a service provider that wasn't doing payments? Do they expect it?
I think that's a very interesting question, and it's a question that I think all folks who are doing digital businesses today grapple with. And the reason for that, I'd say, is that now when I talk to clients and advise clients, I tell them, I, as a consumer, am not comparing your digital experience to another Nigerian digital platform. I am comparing it to an Amazon. And thankfully there's Amazon in Nigeria, right? Prime. I'm comparing it to Netflix, and I'm comparing it to other sort of global standards, and it might be unfortunate. And I was actually having the conversation with someone was saying that we're being slightly unfair to providers on the side, but the truth of the matter is we live in a global world, and the access that a lot of people have today, especially digital consumers, is unparalleled. It's never been, we haven't seen this much. I think there's a stat that I find interesting, which is the world did not have the amount of data it has today even 2 months ago, right? So it just we keep having a democratization of access and democratization of just being able to see things. So I think in that sense, yes, customers expect that the experience you deliver to them on a digital platform is very similar to what you would see and get elsewhere. And that's why, on Twitter, if any one of, I shall not name any institution, but if when one of them is down, people are complaining because they know their Netflix doesn't go down. Their Amazon, they can, whether it's morning, night, noon, they can use Amazon whatever time of the day. And that's why I think customers' expectations are increasingly trending towards this. And if the Netflixes and the Amazons of this world have embedded payments, I think it's only a matter of time before consumers on this side of the world would also expect it, because there's no reason we have the same. In fact, Amazon comes to Nigeria and gets our engineers, right? And gets all our product development people. So there's no reason why we shouldn't have a similar experience. But that is one person field in my
No, absolutely. I don't think, here we're discussing embedded payments, but I don't even think, in another scenario, I'm sitting with Netflix and other things, and I'm just saying, why does this person not have embedded payments? Why does, I'm not thinking about it that way. I'm just thinking, this is easier for me, right? And this is not easy for me. And the reason could even just be, the difference would be that one has the payment embedded and the other doesn't. And if you look at, for example, with Uber, it's you don't even, they're just, your card is there and they're deducting from it. Very easy. You're not paying somewhere else.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it as a consumer. There's some times where people choose to go to even more expensive purchasing, when they're purchasing things a bit more expensive, because the customer journey to pay for that thing is significantly simpler. Significantly simpler. So I love this idea that has been floating around, which is the focus on the customer and delighting the customer and so on and so forth. I think that we probably don't have enough conversations taking a customer lens into the journey that we make them choose to purchase and interact with our product. But I do think that it is highly important, and people very soon, when people have options, they will vote with their feet. I think we're still very much in the early days, and I think when people have options, they will vote with their feet, and you'll see a flight to quality.
Again, I just remember you saying that if you didn't have that product and you were still trying to collect cash, you must even be sitting down here discussing with us. You're probably like, what's going on? So now, as we've been discussing, it's is everyone now going to become a fintech company? Is that what it is? And if that is the case, if your answer is yes, then what does this mean for direct-to-consumer fintech companies? Emmanuel A, you can take that.
Yeah, interesting question. And one that we also, grapple with everything. I think that will everyone become a fintech company? I think the answer is no, right? I think, just to the point that I made earlier in terms of, companies will, ultimately be great at different things and different individual things. They will be able to offer multitudes of products, to their customers. But I do think that, there's always the place for sort of very deep expertise, in specific domains, right? Whether it's fraud, whether it's reconciliation, whether it's, any parts of the journey. And if I almost even think about, what's happened, let's say, just in the consumer side of things, right, is, the reason why a lot of, if you think about fintech in Nigeria, right, the reason why a lot of players were able to come in and really deliver distinctive experiences, right, and take market share of incumbents is because they were also very focused players, right? So it's like a piggy vest was like, hey, we come and we know how to do savings, right? Like that's the one thing we know how to do. And like Carbon is like, hey, we know how to do lending, right? Now, both of these platforms are ultimately diversified into many things. But if I still mention Carbon to you, right, the first thing that comes to your mind is lending, right? Because that's the one thing where they kind of built very deep expertise in, right? Even we're talking about omnibees, right? And I think that the first thing that comes to mind is still commerce, because that's ultimately where they built expertise, and I think everyone will have that, like what we call like an entry point to the customer, right? And if that entry point is shaky, I mean everything ultimately crumbles, right? I think so. I think that first, everyone will sort of remain, folks will remain experts in terms of their core offering, but just like we've all said, customers essentially still want like unified experiences, and so we think that as a fintech player, you now need to build capabilities that allow you to seamlessly partner, seamlessly integrate like with other platforms that your customers are using, right? And so like the fintech of tomorrow is not just the player that just knows how to do payment or just knows how to do lending, but also knows how to basically partner with a commerce player or knows how to partner with a software provider, and really like plug into that ecosystem, right? We honestly even see a world where when you're actually really successful and deep with partners, you've kind of seen instances where like companies together decide to form like joint ventures, right? And really okay, you have X, we have Y. How do we actually work together? In a much more formal way to go after the opportunity, right? I think a couple of weeks ago we kind of learned that DSTV is launching. They're going into payments, right? But they're not just going into payments. Just we're DSTV. We our customer base can do all of these things, right? They've basically gone and partnered with Rapid, and basically say, you guys know payments, you have the expertise. We've got the operational base in the country, we've got the customers, etc. and use cases. Let's work together and let's actually attack new opportunities together. So I think that's the world that we see, sort of like that joint collaboration.
Okay, so happy to announce that if you're a fintech player in this room, you can just tell yourself there's nothing to fear. We're still here, okay? There's still a lot of opportunities, and not everyone will become a fintech. This question is to Mayowa K. Who wins from an embedded payments provider point of view? I think Mayowa A started touching on it a bit, but
no speakable
in theory, everybody should win, right? Because the idea of coming together is to enable people to have a more seamless journey, and make means that people are going to spend more, and so on and so forth. But if you think about who captures value, I think there are two ways to think about it. One is who is bearing the risk, and then secondly, who has the relationship with the customer. And so at the end of the day, at least the way I would think about it is, you do want to ensure that you are in one side of that equation. So as a distributor, you have the relationship with the customer. As the financial institution, you're probably bearing the risk, which then makes it a win-win-win. I think that a lot of conversations we have when it comes to financial services is almost a zero-sum game, which is, I actually think, a fallacy, because we are operating in a context where penetration of financial services at best is 50%. Penetration of digital at best is 20%, right? Same, I'm sure, for you in the e-commerce space. So I think that we should see these as opportunities to expand the pie, and not ways of cutting the pie into smaller chunks.
Okay. Thank you so much. Zainab, would you like to add to that, or I could move to?
Like she rightly said, everyone is a winner. So I'll speak about it from the Onlybiz point of view. We have the FMCG knowledge. We again receive the help of the customers. We know the nuanced pain points of the distributors, able to solve that problem for them. And then we have these people who have brought in their expert solutions as well, and they're able to have like a wider reach, more, what's it called? Even if they take the risk, like he rightly said, they're able to expand their network. So it's a win-win.
And since we've been talking about, encouraging people to think about embedded payments, what are the capabilities on their end? What do they need to put together to be ready to embed payments in whatever solutions that they have?
The first thing that comes to mind is if at least a part of your audience is ready for it. Because those would then be the ones that will either advocate, or maybe Nigeria will happen to the other ones and then both adopt as well. Second is to understand that, and I'm deeply Yoruba, so there's something we say that there's enough space in the sky for every bird to fly. If it's something you want to do, go for it and do it. Because at the end of the day, whatever you're selling, service, product, you have to receive value for it, and you must do it through digital payments the way we say the trend something.
Right. And Mayowa, do you want to add to that as well? Because you deal with a lot of these merchants looking to embed payments. What have you seen, when you deal with so many of them, which ones are more ready than the other, and what capabilities do they have that makes them do?
Maybe just before I answer, right, I just wanted to touch on just the point on the women as well, and just give a practical example, right? I think, we're all tech companies and all of that, right? But many times, you kind of find that you're selling to the same people. It's like, your sales guy comes to the merchant A, 20 minutes after, there's somebody else, coming to sell to the same person, right? And, this is even an embedded payment, is slightly different. But one of the things that we've done, we did with like a partner once was, you guys are selling to these people with like mobile phone finance, right? Like, hey, we can have our salespeople also sell this thing. So as they're selling our product, they can also selling your product. And ultimately what it does, just it subsidizes the acquisition cost for everybody, right? So you're not going and all spending on reasonable amounts, acquiring customers where, ultimately, the value for each of them is very small, right? So I think there's sort of many ways where, really creatively, it can be a win for every single person. But yeah, I think back to the point on capabilities, right? I think, one, important, capability is sort of that, you sort of need to have your, how do I put it, your customer information, or sort of like the way your information architecture is set up, is super important, right? Because I think we've all talked about data privacy, etc., right? So how do you make sure that, whatever information that you're getting from Traction, you're very easily able to, embed it into whatever it is, like, whatever information that you have. And then the second is also the ability to also, design very seamless customer journeys. Because the last thing that you want to do is to layer on like this 3, 4, 5 different products into what you have, and then you ultimately make everything sort of like, very clumsy, right? And so the folks who, have sort of been able to do this better than others are folks where, they've kind of made it like super seamless, right? I think then I give the example of, I accept payments, it goes into my wallet, from that wallet I order stock, and I'm paying from there, right? It's like a seamless journey, and it's not like, hey, go to this platform, do this, and you wait for a while, and then you kind of do something else, right? So that ability to, sort of like, design very seamless journeys is also something that we've seen folks do. I think the third one is, the ability to also like effectively manage like risk, right? Especially where you choose to sort of fully, embed it into your product, where essentially the customer sees you, right? And so, the fraud, the customers come to you, right? And so your ability to actually manage that and build, all of those different systems are also important.
Thank you so much. And we've touched on all of the different parts that are important, and there will be room for networking and asking more questions to our panelists. I just want each one of you to end with one thing, people should leave here thinking about when it comes to embedded payments. Just one.
I would say, it's the fact that customer is key. Customer is key. Know what your capabilities are, either you build or you partner. And then 3, you need to really know what's in it for you. It's great that we're doing this for the customers, but exactly what is in it for you and how are you operationally improving your business as well when it comes to it.
Awesome, thank you.
I think what I'll leave with is I think it's a win-win-win. As Zainab has said, think about your customers, think about expanding the pie, and think about how you create value. And I think, we are in a market where that is exactly what we need to be thinking about right now.
Yeah, I think, kind of really echo the same points that I've made. I think is we're in a market where we essentially have barely scratched the surface, right? Cash to digital migration is just starting. And so there's really a part for every single player to play. Just like Zainab said, there's more than enough space in the sky, for everyone to play.
Thank you so much. Please, can we give them a round of applause? Thank you.